Hello everybody, in this video we're going to talk about polynomials, how to classify them, and the different types that we might see. So we look at this kind of diagram here and we see at the very top the word polynomial, right? And so under the word polynomial we have three other terms: a monomial, a binomial, and a trinomial. So we'll talk about each one of these three, how they're related, how they're different, and some key characteristics about them that we need to know. So let's start with a monomial. A monomial could be one of three things. A monomial could just be a number, like 2, 5, 7, -8, something like that. A monomial could be a variable, x, y, z, or it could be a product of a number and one or more variables, right? So 2x, or 5x squared, or 2xy, right? Something like that. We also need to know the word degree. So the degree of a monomial would be the sum of the exponents of the variables, okay? So if we had 5x squared, well, we know, okay, there's only one variable, x, its exponent is a 2, so the degree of the monomial is 2. Well, if we had 5x squared y cubed, so we have x squared and y cubed, so then we would have 2 plus 3, so the degree would be 5, okay? All right, so then we get into a couple other types of polynomials, a binomial and a trinomial. Well, the prefix bi means 2 and tri means 3, so a binomial is just a sum, or it could be a difference, of two monomials. So think like 4x plus 5, okay? Or, for example, 3x plus 5, right? Something like that. So for a trinomial, it's a sum of three monomials. So now think x squared plus 2x plus 4. Also could have some subtraction signs in there. It could be a difference. But if you notice here at the bottom, we have some important information that applies for binomials and trinomials. So we talked about the degree of a monomial being the sum of the exponents of the variables. Well, degree of a binomial and trinomial is a little bit different. It's just the greatest degree of its terms, okay? So for example, if we look at 3x plus 5, the greatest degree there would be 1 because my x has an exponent of a 1, so the degree of the binomial would be 1. For my trinomial, here we have x squared, so the highest exponent is 2, so the degree of the trinomial would be 2. We also have something called standard form. So in order for a binomial or a trinomial to be in standard form, we want to write it in decreasing order from left to right in terms of its exponents, right? So if we look at this example of our trinomial, we have x squared, our next term is just x, and our last term is our constant, which does not have a variable. And lastly, we need to talk about what is a leading coefficient. So a leading coefficient is the coefficient of the first term whenever our binomial or trinomial is in standard form, okay? All right, so now let's look at some examples. So we want to write these polynomials in standard form, identify the degree and the leading coefficient if there is one, classify each polynomial by the number of terms. So monomial, binomial, trinomial. So we'll start on the left with 5x, okay? So in standard form, it's just going to be 5x. We don't have to change anything there. Okay, the degree, notice we just have an x, so our degree is just 1. Why is it 1? Because if we just see x, that means there's actually an exponent of a 1 there. The leading coefficient, so I'm going to call that LC. Leading coefficient here would just be 5. That's our only coefficient. And let's classify. So since there's only one term here, this would be a monomial. All right, the next one, 2 plus 4x cubed minus 2x. So we write in standard form, so the largest exponent is 3, so we want to write 4x cubed first. Then we're going to say minus 2x and plus 2. So that'd be our standard form. The degree here is just our highest exponent, which is 3. Our leading coefficient, since we already wrote it in standard form, we just look at the first number that we see. So the leading coefficient would be 4, and there are 3 terms, so this would be a trinomial. And the next one, 7z minus z to the 5th. So standard form, we're going to want to write negative z to the 5th first, and then plus 7z. Our degree here is going to be 5, because that's our highest exponent. Our leading coefficient is going to be -1, because there's actually a 1 there before z, right, -1. And there are 2 terms here, so this will be a binomial. Okay, so now you see the last two, they're just numbers, right? They're just constants. So in standard form, once again, it's just a 6, or it's just the number, so 26. The degree here, okay, so do we see an exponent? No, right? So if we don't see an exponent, the degree is 0. It can't be 1 because that means there's an x there or there's a variable there. So since there is no variable, our degree is 0. Okay, for leading coefficient, we're just going to say NA does not apply. There is no coefficient because there's no variable. And this would be a monomial. Okay, so now the last one is 0. So you might be asking yourselves, why would we have two constants in a row? Why would we do 26? Why would we do 0? Well, that's because there's a little bit of a difference here. So it's still 0 in standard form, but now our degree is a little bit different. Since the number itself is 0, there is no degree. Okay, there is not a degree when the constant is 0. Once again, leading coefficient, there's no variable, so there is no coefficient, and this would be a monomial. Okay, so that is how you classify polynomials.